January 22nd, 1943. 24,000 feet OV. The sun has not yet broken fully over the horizon. A faint silver line glows beneath a slab of winter cloud, and the world below looks like a sheet of hammered steel. Inside the cockpit of his Republic P-47C Thunderbolt, Lieutenant Charles "Red" Harriman feels the vibration of the massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 radial engine pulsing through the airframe. It's a deep, throaty rumble, more like the heartbeat of a locomotive than that of a fighter aircraft. Frost creeps along the inner edges of his canopy, cracking and retreating every few seconds as warm air Harriman rolls his shoulders and checks his oxygen flow. His squadron, the 61st Fighter Squadron, 56th Fighter Group, rises in a staggered formation behind him, each Thunderbolt leaving faint, ghost-white contrails that step. They've been in the air for nearly an hour, escorting a formation of B-17 flying fortresses headed toward Lille. And so far, nothing. No radio chatter from German ground control, no shimmering dots on the horizon, no contrails slashing through the sky. Just silence. But Harriman has flown enough missions to know silence is rust. A voice crackles in his headset. Captain Frank O'Reilly, their FL. Keep your eyes open, boys. Luftwaffe's been quiet this morning. Too quiet. Harriman lets out a tight breath. The Germans usually aren't this patient. They hit hard, hit fast, and vanished before the Thunderbolts, or the slower P-38 escorts, could pin them down. But today, something feels different. He glances left, scanning the far edge of the cloud bank. And for a moment, he sees nothing. Just the slow roll of vapor across the sky. Then, a flash. Just a flicker of sunlight, but enough. Then another, and another. Tiny metallic glints, like someone dragging a handful of silver needles across the horizon. Harriman's stomach tightens. Bandits! 11 o'clock high. Looks like a full swarm, maybe two. Before O'Reilly even responds, the contrails appear. Sharp white lines carving downward from altitude, angled like spears. Then the shapes become clear. Messerschmitt Bf-109Gs, their noses pointed straight toward the bomber stream. And right behind them, like wolves pacing the edge of a herd, a second layer of fighters descends. Focke-Wulf 190As, the Luftwaffe's prized workhorse, stubby-winged, brutal, and fast. O'Reilly's voice erupts in Harriman's radio. Thunderbolts! Jettison tanks and take 'em head on. Protect the forts. Metal clatters as Harriman punches the emergency release, sending his drop tanks spiraling away. The Thunderbolt, suddenly lighter, surges forward as he shoves the throttle to the stop. The R-2800 roars, the aircraft trembling with raw power. But the Germans aren't diving at the Thunderbolts. They're ignoring them entirely. They're laughing at them. Literally. Over German radio chatter, Allied interceptors later translated remarks from Luftwaffe pilots that morning. Die Fliegende 10. The flying barrels are back. Too slow, too heavy. They cannot climb. Clumsy milk jugs. They will never catch us. The insult isn't new. German pilots have mocked the P-47 since its debut. Its massive radial engine and thick fuselage make it far larger than sleek Allied fighters. Many Luftwaffe aces dismissed it outright. Too obese to climb quickly, too sluggish to turn, too slow to chase. A joke aircraft, a flying milk jug. But Harriman isn't thinking about insults. He's thinking about the 20 cannons on those 190s. And the fact that if they punch into the B-17 formation unopposed, this mission will turn into a slaughter. He pushes the stick forward. The nose dips. Gravity grabs the Thunderbolt, all 10,000 pounds of it, and drags it into a ferocious descent. Air screams along the fuselage as the altimeter spins downward. The massive plane vibrates, but the Pratt & Whitney engine holds strong, its deep roar rising to a full-throated bellow. The German fighters slice toward the bombers. Harriman slices toward them. He presses the mic switch. "Raven leader, Raven 3. I'm going for the back swarm." O'Reilly answers instantly. "Hit him hard." The sky compresses into a tunnel. Harriman's eyes narrow behind his goggles. The lead Fw-190 grows larger, its wings dipping as the German pilot lines up a firing solution on the nearest B-17. At 800 yards, Harriman's thumb finds the trigger on the control stick. 8 Browning M 2.50 caliber machine guns, 4 in each wing, explode to life. A wall of flame erupts in front of him. The recoil shudders through the Thunderbolt as more than 400 rounds per second pour out in twin rivers, streaking ahead in converging lines. The German pilot never sees it coming. The .50 caliber rounds smash into the Fw-190's left wing root, punching through aluminum, hydraulics, and fuel lines. The fighter jerks sideways violently. A second burst tears through the cockpit. The 190 cartwheels, trailing fire, and disappears into the clouds below. Harriman doesn't have time to watch it fall. Another 190 flashes across his nose. Too close. He yanks the stick, the G-forces slamming him into his seat. The Thunderbolt groans, but it holds, banking sharply. The German tries to climb, but climbing is the one thing Harriman's plane does exceptionally well in a dive surge. The Thunderbolt punches upward after him, shedding speed, but gaining angle. For the first time that day, Harriman hears German radio chatter cutting through the static. "Achtung! Thunderbolt! Ist schnell! So schnell!" "Attention! The Thunderbolt! He is fast! Too fast!" The laughter is gone. The joke has ended. Harriman lines up behind the climbing 190. He breathes out slowly, steadies the gun sight, and squeezes the trigger again. Another volcanic cascade of tracers. Another German fighter evaporates into a ball of smoke and flame. Behind him, the rest of the 56th Fighter Group plunges into the melee, and the quiet January sky erupts into chaos. Machine gun fire, engines screaming, contrails whipping apart in violent spirals. But for the first time in months, the Thunderbolts aren't chasing Luftwaffe fighters. They're killing them, and the Germans, who once mocked the massive American plane, are realizing in real time that the P-47 Thunderbolt is not a joke. It's a monster, a metal juggernaut built for one purpose: to rain lead on anything foolish enough to underestimate it. January 22nd, 1943. 23,000 feet over northern France. The sky has become a battlefield in motion. A three-dimensional storm of tracers, breaking contrails, and twisting aircraft that flash silver before vanishing into clouds. The German attack, so confident moments earlier, is unraveling in real time. And the catalyst is the one fighter they never took seriously. Lieutenant Harriman punches through a thin cloud layer, engine howling, eyes searching for movement. The Thunderbolt's cockpit rattles from the aftershock of his last firing pass. Shell casings still clatter against the underside of his fuselage, tumbling into the empty sky below. His breathing is steady now. The fear, that cold, brief spike that hit when he first saw the swarm of 190s diving on the B-17S, is gone, burned away by pure adrenaline. Then he sees it, a lone Bf-109G slicing upward from beneath the bomber stream. A vertical climb, clean and controlled. The German pilot knows exactly what he's doing. He's aiming for the blind spot under a fortress's belly, where a few well-placed 20mm cannon shells can rip through the bomb bay and ignite half a ton of explosives. The B-17's ball turret spins wildly, hunting for the attacker. But the 109 is too low, too fast, too precise. Harriman angles the Thunderbolt toward the climbing German. The 109 pilot fires. A burst of 20 shells arcs upward, exploding across the B-17's right wing in a shower of sparks and aluminum shards. Smoke pours from the engine nacelle. The German adjusts his approach for the kill shot. Harriman pushes the throttle forward until the lever can go no farther. The R-2800 radial engine roars like a wild animal as the Thunderbolt dives, accelerating with terrifying momentum. The cockpit shakes violently. His teeth rattle. But the P-47 can handle it. In a dive, nothing, not even a 109, can outrun it. The distance closes in seconds. 800 yards, 600, 400. Harriman lines up the gun's sight. The 109 jerks left, trying to slip away. The Thunderbolt follows, relentless. He pulls the trigger. 8.50 caliber guns erupt again. Flame, smoke, thunder. The recoil slams through the wings. Tracers tear across the sky like a glowing net. The 109 takes the hit squarely across its fuselage. The canopy explodes outward as rounds punch through metal, instrument panels, and flesh. The German fighter spirals downward, trailing black smoke, its engine coughing flame. Harriman watches long enough to confirm it won't recover. Then something catches his eye. A shadow, too close. He yanks the stick right. A burst of cannon fire rips past his canopy. No more than 5 feet to his left. The air shudders. Black smoke streaks behind an Fw-190 that has swooped in from above. The German pilot overshoots, banking hard, but the Thunderbolt's sudden brake has ruined his shot. Harriman rolls, cuts throttle, then slams it forward again. A brutal maneuver designed to bleed speed and force the 190 into a predictable turn. It works. The German tries to loop upward into another firing arc. But P-47 pilots have learned a simple truth over the past months. If a Thunderbolt points its nose down, it becomes a missile. Harriman dives. The airspeed indicator climbs past 420 miles per hour. The Thunderbolt trembles so fiercely that the control stick buzzes in his hand. The wind screams behind the canopy like a living creature. He pulls back gently, lifting the nose just enough to bring the 190 into his gun sight. The German sees him and panics. He rolls too sharply, losing altitude fast. The 190's wings wobble. Its rudder jerks. The German pilot is fighting both gravity and fear and losing to both. At 300 yards, Harriman fires a short burst. 3 hits, 2 across the tail, 1 into the right wing root, but that's enough. The Fw-190 tumbles into a spin. The pilot tries to recover, but the Thunderbolt's .50 caliber rounds have shredded the control surfaces. The fighter disappears into the cloud deck below, still spiraling. Harriman exhales slowly. This isn't luck. This is physics. Weight, speed, momentum, firepower. The very traits German pilots mocked. The Thunderbolt's size, its bulk, its supposed sluggishness, are the same traits turning it into a predator. A voice crackles over the radio. Breathless, urgent. "Thunderbolt 6 o'clock! Brake! Brake!" Harriman doesn't think. He reacts. He slams the right rudder pedal, rolling hard. A spray of 7.92 rounds flashes past his canopy. A Bf-109 has latched onto him, closing in fast. The German pilot has made a fatal assumption that the P-47 cannot outdive or out-accelerate his lighter, more agile 109. He's wrong. Harriman doesn't try to turn. He dives, power on, nose down. The Thunderbolt drops like a falling anvil. Airspeed skyrockets. The 109 follows. For a moment. But the P-47 simply falls faster. By 18,000 feet, the German's guns are out of range. By 15,000 feet, he's a shrinking speck. By 12,000 feet, he breaks off entirely, engine screaming, wings trembling. Harriman levels out, pulling hard to stop the dive. His vision momentarily tunnels, dark edges closing in until the world becomes a narrow circle. He breathes deeply. The gray haze lifts. Above him, the bomber formation is still intact, shaken, battered, but alive. He climbs back toward the battle, scanning for O'Reilly and the rest of the squadron. The radio fills with overlapping voices. 1-9, splash another 190. Taking fire, need help. 11 o'clock. Forts turning east, maintain escort. Thunderbolt. Good God, did you see that dive? Harriman can hear the shift in tone. Awe, relief, realization. The Thunderbolt is no longer a subject of mockery. Not to the Americans. Not to the Germans. Not to anyone who has witnessed what it can do at full power. As Harriman climbs back toward the contrails, the sky looks different. The Luftwaffe fighters are scattering, pulling away from the bombers, disengaging. What began as a confident German assault is dissolving into a retreat. The Thunderbolts have turned the tide. And this is only the beginning. January 22nd, 1943. 21,000 feet over northern France. The Luftwaffe's retreat is not a clean one. It never is. Fighters break off in fragments. Some climbing desperately toward the sun, others diving for cloud cover, and a few circling wide, searching for wounded prey or a chance to land one last cannon burst before departing the battle. The sky is a mosaic of chaos. Twisting vapor trails, burning aircraft tumbling through space, and the distant silhouette of B-17s pressing forward with grim determination. Lieutenant Harriman climbs steadily, leveling out just below the bomber stream. His Thunderbolt feels different now, lighter somehow, despite the weight of spent ammunition and adrenaline. The R-2800 thunders evenly. The plane is performing exactly as Republic's engineers promised. A machine built not for elegance, but for survival and destruction. He switches frequencies briefly, listening to B-17 chatter. Engine 2's hit, feathering it now. Waist gun jammed, clearing it. We've got smoke on the right side. Anyone have visual? The fortresses are limping, but they're alive. And they're alive because of the one fighter the Germans thought could do nothing. Harriman scans the eastern sky. A cluster of black dots flickers against the pale horizon. He recognizes them instantly. Fw-190s, maybe 6 or 7, circling like vultures. They haven't given up. They're regrouping. The Luftwaffe rarely leaves without taking another swing. Before Harriman can warn the others, Captain O'Reilly's voice cuts through the radio, sharp and energized. Raven Squadron with me. We're pushing the stragglers before they rally. Harriman forms up behind O'Reilly, tightening formation as the Thunderbolts surge forward. Their shadows skim across the top of a drifting cloud bank. Long and distorted like steel giants marching through mist. The German fighters see them, and instead of retreating, the 190s turn toward them. 7 dark silhouettes cutting low across the horizon. For a moment, the sky falls silent. 2 forces closing in. 2 lines of aircraft drawing closer. 2 sets of pilots, each aware that the next 30 seconds could define their lives. The distance closes rapidly. 4,000 yards, 3,000, 2,000. The Germans open fire first. Flashes flicker from their noses. Brief, bright bursts. Tracers streak past the Thunderbolts in glowing arcs. One ricochets off Harriman's left wingtip with a metallic crack, but O'Reilly doesn't waver. Hold steady, hold. The Thunderbolts push forward, engines screaming. 1,000 yards, now. Harriman sees their faces. Helmets, goggles, brief flashes of eyes. One of the German pilots actually tilts his head, as if unable to understand why these flying milk jugs are charging straight into cannon fire. O'Reilly roars into the radio. Now! The Thunderbolts split, half upward, half downward. A sudden V-shaped break that sprays the German formation with .50 caliber fire from 2 directions at once. Harriman dives low, then pulls up hard, bringing a 190 into perfect alignment in his gun sight. He fires. A burst rips through the German's right wing. The 190 jolts violently but doesn't fall. The pilot reacts instantly, rolling inverted and diving. A clean, professional move. This isn't a fresh recruit. This is an experienced ace. Harriman chases him. The Thunderbolt dives faster, closing the distance as the German pulls low over the cloud tops. Harriman's engine howls behind him, the plane trembling with raw force. The German brakes left. Harriman mirrors him. The German rolls right. Harriman stays glued to his tail. Below them, clouds rupture into streaking white lines as both fighters slice through the air just feet above the vapor layer. The German twists violently, trying to shake the heavier Thunderbolt. But that weight, once mocked, gives Harriman an advantage. The P-47's momentum is unstoppable. Every time the German rolls, Harriman's aircraft pushes through inertia like it doesn't exist. The 190 levels out for a heartbeat. Harriman fires. 3.50 cal rounds punch through the German's canopy. The fighter jerks upward, flames erupting from its engine. Then it snaps sideways and plunges into the clouds below, leaving a spiraling black trail behind. Harriman pulls up sharply and scans for O'Reilly. He finds him locked in a duel with another 190. This one diving and climbing in tight arcs, a classic rope-a-dope maneuver designed to force an opponent into a stall. But O'Reilly isn't having it. He cuts throttle, widens his turn, and angles the Thunderbolt just enough to keep the German from gaining position. Then O'Reilly does something Harriman doesn't expect. He calls calmly into the radio. "Harriman, you're clear. Take him." Harriman throttles forward, swings into position, and lines up the German fighter. The 190 dances left, then right. Sharp, precise moves from a pilot who clearly trusts his aircraft's agility. But the Thunderbolt closes anyway. The German rolls into a dive. Harriman dives with him. The airspeed indicator jumps to 430, then 450. The Thunderbolt begins to shake like metal under a sledgehammer. The 190 pulls up, a desperate attempt to break the dive before ripping its own wings off. Harriman anticipates it. He pulls the trigger, a full 3-second burst. The .50 cal guns thunder so loudly that his cockpit vibrates. The stream of bullets cuts through the German fighter's fuselage from tail to nose. The engine detonates in a blossom of flame. The 190 vanishes into a fireball, debris scattering like embers from a furnace. Above him, O'Reilly shouts, "Beautiful shot! Keep pushing! They're breaking!" Harriman circles upward and sees the truth. The remaining German fighters are fleeing. They peel away in all directions, abandoning the attack entirely. The Luftwaffe's famous discipline, its no retreat unless ordered ethos, collapses under raw survival instinct. No one wants to fight the Thunderbolt anymore. Not after what they've just seen. Harriman slows, leveling out near the bomber formation. The sky is eerily quiet now. Smoke trails drift like torn cloth. A B-17 limps along with one engine dead. But the formation is still intact. The German laughter, smug, confident, dismissive, is gone. In its place is fear. A fear earned inch by inch, bullet by bullet, through the simple fact that the Thunderbolt does what no one believed it could. And this mission, this day, is only the beginning of that revelation. January 22nd, 1943. RAF Horsham, St. Faith Airfield, England. The mission debriefing room is thick with the smell of wet wool, engine oil, and adrenaline. Pilots pack shoulder to shoulder, oxygen masks hanging loose around their necks, flight suits still damp with sweat from hours at altitude. Their faces are flushed, eyes bright, expressions carrying that unmistakable mix of exhaustion and awe. Lieutenant Harriman sinks into a wooden bench, his legs trembling slightly from the G-loads of repeated dives. His hands still buzz faintly, as if the vibration of the Thunderbolt's 8 Brownings hasn't quite left his muscles. Captain O'Reilly steps into the center of the room, tossing his gloves onto the table. The room quiets instantly. He doesn't smile, not fully, but there's something close. "Gentlemen, today the Luftwaffe learned what a P-47 can do." A ripple of laughter fills the room. Not the laughter of arrogance, but the kind of shocked, disbelieving relief only combat veterans understand. Harriman glances around. He sees nods, small smiles, and faces lit with something new. Confidence. For months, they'd flown an aircraft others mocked. Too big, too heavy, too slow. A beast untested. A bruiser without finesse. Now it's something else. A monster the Germans finally fear. O'Reilly clears his throat, picking up a clipboard. 6 confirmed kills, 4 probables. 0 losses. That last line hits the room like a shockwave. 0 losses. For escort missions over Europe, that's a miracle. A mathematical impossibility. Someone near the back mutters, "Holy hell." 0. Even the intelligence officer, a calm, glasses-wearing lieutenant used to bad news and worse statistics, looks stunned. O'Reilly continues. The German pilots weren't expecting diving attacks at over 450 miles per hour. They weren't expecting the range. And they damn sure weren't expecting 850s firing at once. A pilot from B Flight raises a hand. "Sir, you should have heard them on German radio." Laughing at us 1 minute, he pauses, screaming for help the next. More laughter. Grim, dark, but real. Harriman leans back, letting the exhaustion wash over him. His mind drifts to the moment he first saw that flash of sun off a Messerschmitt's canopy. The fear, the jolt of adrenaline, the way the Thunderbolt transformed the instant he pushed its nose down. He remembers the violence of the dive, the roar of the engine, the thunder of 8 guns firing in perfect harmony, and the look, or the imagined look, of the German pilots when they realized the aircraft they'd mocked was about to tear them apart. Then a voice interrupts his thoughts. "Lieutenant Harriman." He looks up. O'Reilly is standing over him. "Hell of a job out there." Harriman nods awkwardly. "Just doing my part, sir?" O'Reilly smirks. "You did more than that. You proved to the Germans, and maybe to ourselves, that the Thunderbolt isn't just an escort." He pauses. "It's a hunter." Harriman doesn't reply, but he doesn't need to. Because in that moment, he knows the truth. The P-47 is finally proving itself, and the war in the air is about to change. 2 days later, January 24th, 1943. Debden Airfield, 4th Fighter Group HQ. Word spreads across the European theater at the speed of rumor and the precision of truth. By the time Harriman's squadron is refueling for another escort run, pilots from the 4th Fighter Group are already discussing the Thunderbolt's performance. And among them is Major Hubert "Hub" Zemke, tall, sharp-eyed, and intense. Zemke has the kind of battlefield intuition that borders on uncanny. He's been watching the P-47 program closely because he knows something many others don't. The Thunderbolt was never designed for tight-turning fights. It was designed to dominate the vertical, to own the altitude, to master the dive, to crush enemies with raw energy and overwhelming firepower. Zemke had argued this for months, and now he has proof. He stands beside a chalkboard, arms crossed, as younger pilots crowd around. Someone asks him if the rumors about Harriman's squadron are true. Zemke responds dryly, "True? Hell, boys, it's better than true." He sketches 3 rough silhouettes, a Bf-109, an Fw-190, and a P-47. Then he draws 2 lines, one climbing, one diving. The P-47 owns the dive completely. Zemke taps the board with the chalk. They think we're slow? Fine, let them climb. We dive. He raps the chalk again, hard. And we smash them on the way down. The pilots exchange glances, excited, nervous, intrigued. Zemke finishes. The Jug, the Thunderbolt, isn't here to dance. It's here to kill. January 26th, 1943. Over the Ardennes. Harriman can feel the shift before anyone says a word. The tone on the radio is different today. No cautious edge, no tight tension waiting for the inevitable German attack. Instead, there's anticipation, a quiet eagerness. O'Reilly speaks over the radio. Boys, if they show up, we hit them hard. Moments later, the Luftwaffe obliges. A formation of Fw-190s dives from above, just like before. Same approach vector, same confidence. But something is different. The Thunderbolts don't wait. They climb. They charge upward, not downward, closing the distance with raw horsepower. The Germans hesitate, surprised. They expected defensive maneuvers, not aggression. Harriman locks onto the lead 190. The sky fills with twisting contrails as the two forces collide head-on. He squeezes the trigger. 8 guns roar, and the lead German fighter disintegrates mid-air, torn apart by a storm of .50 caliber rounds before it can fire a single burst. The rest scatter instantly, not to regroup, not to fight, but to run. The Luftwaffe has seen enough, and the Thunderbolt has only just begun its reign. January 26th, 1943. 19,000 feet above the Ardennes. The German formation dissolves in seconds. The moment Lieutenant Harriman's burst tears apart the lead 190, the others scatter like startled birds, rolling, diving, climbing, anything to avoid the charging Thunderbolts. It's no longer the bold, disciplined attack they launched only weeks before. This is something closer to retreat driven by instinct. Harriman levels out, smoke trails whipping past his canopy. He can see one of the Fw-190s diving sharply toward a river valley below, the pilot pushing the aircraft to its limit. The German is choosing life over pride, a choice becoming more common as encounters with the P-47 pile up. Captain O'Reilly's voice cuts sharply into the radio. Let them go. Forts are turning east. Maintain escort. The order is simple, expected, professional. But the implication hangs in the air like a final verdict. The Luftwaffe no longer wants a fight. Harriman banks back toward the bomber stream, his Thunderbolt's wings catching the evening sun. As he climbs, he sees the contrails of the B-17s glowing gold at their wingtips. The formation is intact. No losses, just like the last mission, just like the Thunderbolt was built for. Another voice crackles over the radio. One of the B-17 tail gunners, breathless and still half shouting. Thunderbolts. Damn fine flying today. Saved our hides again. The acknowledgement hits Harriman harder than he expects. Escort fighters and bomber crews shared a tense, sometimes distrustful relationship early in the war. Before the P-47 arrived, enemy fighters could rip into the formation from any angle, while lightly armed Allied escorts struggled to keep pace. But now the bombers sound reassured, confident, protected. O'Reilly responds, We'll always be here, Fortress. Keep the engines turning. The B-17 gunner laughs, a weary, grateful sound swallowed by static. Harriman lines up alongside another Thunderbolt, the two aircraft flying close enough for him to see the pilot inside nod once, slowly. Below, clouds drift like white mountains. Above, the sun splits the forming contrails into streaks of copper and red. For the first time since arriving in Europe, Harriman feels something he hadn't known he was missing. Hope. 2 weeks later, February 1943. Debden Airfield. Snow piles along the edges of the runway, forming uneven white ridges stained with oil, mud, and exhaust soot. Mechanics work tirelessly under canvas shelters, tools clattering against metal while the smell of gasoline and cold steel clings to the air. A low, heavy thunder rolls across the field. a sound unmistakable to anyone who has flown in Europe these last few months. A Thunderbolt warming up, but this one is different. Sleeker wingtips, improved turbo supercharger controls, better ammunition feeds, a redesigned paddle blade propeller capable of wringing every last ounce of thrust out of the R2800. The P-47D, the next evolution of the Jug. Major Hub Zemke stands beside the aircraft, gloved hands tucked behind his back as the engine throttles up, sending a vibration through the frost-covered ground. A young lieutenant walks beside him. "Sir, do you think the Germans will try to challenge us again?" Zemke doesn't answer immediately. He watches the Thunderbolt lift its tail, rolling forward with a grunt of raw power, propeller blur shimmering against the winter light. Then he speaks quietly. "They'll try. They always do. But they won't laugh anymore." The young pilot swallows hard, nodding. Zemke turns to him. "You know what they said about this plane when it arrived?" The lieutenant nods. That it was too big to dogfight, too heavy, too slow. Zemke snorts. Funny how the war changes opinions. The Thunderbolt roars down the runway and leaps into the sky, leaving a curling trail of exhaust behind it. March 1944. Schweinfurt, Germany. Harriman now leads a flight of seasoned pilots, veterans hardened by a year of brutal air combat. The 56th Fighter Group is no longer the untested unit flying a strange-looking aircraft. They are now the most feared American fighter group in Europe, and their mounts, once mocked, are now recognized as instruments of sky-shattering destruction. Below them lies Schweinfurt, one of the most heavily defended industrial targets in Germany, bristling with flak batteries, searchlights, and radar stations. Waves of B-17S move across the target area like slow, steady glaciers of steel. Above them, nothing but Thunderbolts. Hours earlier, the Luftwaffe massed for a major interception. Intelligence estimates suggested more than 200 enemy fighters were gearing up to swarm the bomber stream. Now, as Harriman's squadron angles into the sun and scans the horizon, he sees the truth. The Luftwaffe never reached them, because the P-47S did. The initial intercept was an aerial brawl of terrifying speed. Thunderbolts diving through German formations at more than 480 miles per hour, ripping through fighters with walls of tracers so thick that some German pilots swore the air itself was on fire. And now, the sky belongs to the Americans. Harriman banks gently, watching the bomber formations below. The radio crackles. "Raven leader. No enemy contacts for 50 miles. Where the hell are the Jerrys?" Harriman answers calmly. "They're running, or they're on the ground." A beat of silence. Then, "Because of us?" Harriman looks out across the bright, empty sky. "Yes." He doesn't say it with arrogance. He says it with understanding. For years, the Luftwaffe owned the skies of Europe. Their pilots were seasoned, deadly, fearless. Their aircraft were beautifully engineered machines, designed for agility and lethal precision. But wars are not won by beauty. They are won by force, by durability, by machines capable of inflicting more punishment than anyone expects. By monsters like the P-47 Thunderbolt. Harriman throttles forward and climbs, his Thunderbolt's massive engine roaring like a storm. Later that night, Debden Airfield. The debriefing room is bright with lanterns, laughter, and an energy that feels entirely foreign compared to the dark days of early 1943. Pilots swap stories. Mechanics clap one another on the back. Even the intelligence officers are smiling. On the wall behind them hangs a chalkboard. It lists the group's performance for the day. B-17S lost, 0 P-47S lost, 0 enemy fighters destroyed, 43. At the bottom, someone has written in thick, bold chalk, "The Jug strikes back." Harriman leans against the back wall, helmet under his arm, watching the celebration with a quiet satisfaction. He knows the war isn't over. He knows the Luftwaffe will regroup, try new tactics, deploy new aircraft. But he also knows this. The Germans will never again laugh at the Thunderbolt. He steps outside into the cold night. Stars glitter above the airfield like tiny sparks drifting across a black canvas. The wind carries faint traces of fuel and dust. Then he hears it, a familiar rumble, a mechanic running a final engine test, warming up a Thunderbolt for dawn patrol. The sound shakes the air, deep, proud, unstoppable. Harriman closes his eyes and smiles. The jug, the flying milk jug, the brute, the monstrosity, the iron hammer of the skies, has become something far greater than anyone expected. Not just a fighter, not just an escort, but the machine that changed the air war over Europe. A machine the enemy will never underestimate again.